You guys? This is Curtis with Show Up Lifestyle. Today I want to talk about 9 to 5 slaves and House of Negroes. Um, House of Negroes is just a funny term, and I'll tell you about that in a minute. But first, what I wanted to do today, I'm not going to do a quote, but I wanted to do a definition. So I looked up the definition of slavery, and here's what it said. The first definition was the state of being a slave. Okay, not very informative. The second one was the practice or system of owning slaves. Okay, and then this third one, which was most interesting to me, it says a condition compared to that of a slave in respect of exhausting labor or restricted freedom. So if you think about a 9 to 5 and you think of this definition, a condition compared to that of a slave, what did a slave do? A slave worked. Um, in respect of exhausting labor. People are working 8 hours a day. Um, you know, they had to make laws to allow people to make it mandatory that they get to take a lunch and their breaks. So now it's against the law, but it wasn't always, and it wasn't so long ago that it wasn't like this. And in a lot of places that aren't union or small businesses, they're not allowing people to take lunches. They're not allowing people to take breaks, um, or restricted freedom. So when even though now it's like, oh, you can take a lunch, but you have to take a break every 2 hours. You have to take a lunch within 5 hours. You know, um, let's say you're not hungry within the 5 hours. You have to take that lunch within those 5 hours. You have to eat at that time. You have to eat in the allotted amount of time that they tell you to eat. Um, and the funny thing is when you think of slavery, you think of free labor. And nowhere in the definition of slavery does it say anything about free labor. It says the state of being a slave, the practice or system of owning slaves, a condition compared to that of a slave in respect of exhausting labor or restricted freedom. So, I mean, you get you got prisoners, um, prisoners, people who are in jail who are slaves. It's free labor. Um, they get told when they can leave, when they can go outside, when they can eat, what they can eat, and that's slavery. Some people might think that because they're in prison, they deserve it. But, I would like to think we live in a world where, justice is served, but it's not always that point. As you can see, a young kid, and I'm not going to say black kid because if it was a white kid, if it was a Mexican kid, no matter what, it would be messed up. That some kid um, has candy on him, and because he pulls it out of his pocket, he gets shot because some cop thinks that it's a gun, and the cop gets away with it. But then he still gets to go back to his life. He might be suspended for a while, but he still gets to go back home to his kids um, and his wife as a murderer. Basically a murderer. The same people that are in prison are in the system that are protecting us. So that's way beyond slaves, though. So pretty much where I want to go with this is you have three options. Basically, when it comes to 9 to 5 slave, you could be a horrible slave. Um, you can be a great slave, or you can be a master. And those are your basic three options when it comes to 9 to 5 slaves. Now, what I'm going to do is explain what a house Negro is. It's funny because back when you know olden times slavery, um, Malcolm X was like the opposite of Martin Luther King. Malcolm X was like, stick it to the white man. Martin Luther King was like, peace to all. And Malcolm X came up with house Negroes. And what house Negroes is you had the slaves that were working for the master but hated the master. They they worked in the field. They were shoveling dirt, picking up shit, um, out there picking cotton, uh, cutting down branches, whatever work they had them doing. They had bad attitudes. They didn't want to be there, and people act like, oh, just have a positive attitude. Like, um, if you take toys away from a kid, he's not gonna be happy, right? So I mean, if you take a group of people away from their country and make them work outside in heat and treat them like dogs, like how easy is it to really have a positive attitude? How many people are really going to have a positive attitude towards that? When you got people beating on you just because they own you. You're just a pet, and you do what they say, and if you don't, you get a spanking, a whooping. And then Malcolm X said the house Negroes. So the house Negroes were the yes sir, yes master. And Ari Spears, he did a skit on one of his comedy specials, and he was talking about how he was at home and he had his white friend over, and his mom came in the room and busted in the door and said, "Turn off the game right now. I told you you can't play the game." And then slammed the door, and the white kid was like, "Ari, she can't talk to you like that. This is your private space. You have a right. You have freedom." And Ari Spears said he turned into a slave. He was like, "Now you don't go talking about Master like that. Master treat me really well. She feeds me, she bathes me, she clothes me." And that was basically what Malcolm X was saying as a house Negro. The house Negro was the guy that when Master got sick, he made the soup, gave him a cold towel to put on his forehead, made sure he got the right medicine. That was the house Negro. But if you put the field Negro in the house and Master is sick and you got to get him some soup, the Master might be sipping on some rat poison or something. Like the Master is like, "I hope he dies." I mean, the field Negro might be like, "I hope he dies," but the house Negro is like, "Oh no, Master, please, please, please stay alive." And that's what Malcolm X referred to as a house Negro. It was like, the what I was saying with the three options. You could be a horrible slave, you could be a great slave, you could be a master. And that's basically the options we have today in modern day society is, we can go about life with this poor ass attitude. And I do believe it's modern day slavery, but it's not, none of us are forced into it. And I think most of us need that 9 to 5, at least to start, at least to get a little income going, at least to have a little bit of freedom. So you got to work for somebody else. Most people, there's a reason why most people work for somebody else. You don't just appear with money, and the only people who don't work for someone else are the children of the masters. And that's basically how it is. The children of the masters don't have to work. Well, I mean, everybody has to work, but they don't have to be slaves. Because they inherit mastership, basically. They're born into money, they're born into businesses, so they don't have to be slaves. They have mentors that are masters, and they become masters, so they don't have to go through that. But for the majority of us, we have to go through the 9 to 5. So you could be a horrible slave, right? You can go work for someone. You can put in a half-ass effort. You can say this is slavery. You can say they're not treating you fair. You can say they're not paying you enough. And at that point, find a new master. You know, but the last thing you want to be is a horrible slave, someone who's not employable. Because if you're a horrible slave, you're probably not going to be a great master either. You're probably not going to be able to put in the work ethic, because you already adapted this poor way of thinking about working. You've developed poor work habits because of your attitude towards working for somebody else, because you don't really have an out. You don't really have an interest in doing something else. You're restricted to this way of thinking that you have to work for somebody your whole life. So you have a poor attitude towards work, and that's going to lead to you being a poor master because you're not going to be able to work for yourself. Or you could be a great slave. Now, these are the CEOs of companies. These are the managers. These are the, the top guys, the top performers, the top salesmen. And these people are great slaves. Like, people want them to work for them. If you find a salesman and he's selling Toyotas and you work for Honda and you see he's making 20 grand a month, which is 15 grand a month more than everyone else who sells cars, you're like, hold on, come over to Honda. We want to own you. And right here it says the practice or system of owning slaves. We want to own you. You got to be ownable. If you have a talent, if you have a skill, people want to own you. And when you become a great slave, then you can become a great master, because now you have a reputation of good work. So now you can say, all right, I don't want you to own me anymore. I want to own myself. And now I could go find my own work. Now I can go work for numerous people, but I work for myself. So at the end of the day, you'll always be a slave because you'll always be working for somebody. But instead of working for an employer, you'll be working for your peers. So you're not obligated to show up at any certain hour. You're not obligated. You're not a slave. You're not on somebody else's time. You own your life. You can say yes to that project. You can say no to that project. It's your business. You can work when you want to. You cannot work. But there is, do I want my business to fail? Do I want it to succeed? Is this going to bring me closer towards freedom, or is this going to bring me back to being a slave? So, you got to be a slave to somebody, or numerous somebodies. You either have employers or customers, or you're getting taken care of by the government, which then you kind of have freedom, but not really. You don't really, they give you a certain amount of money that you got to live off, and it's just enough to live. And pretty much you can stay at home all day and watch TV and, be a horrible slave, never be a great slave, never be a master, and just kind of be there, So, that's my spiel. That's my spiel on 9 to 5 slaves and house Negroes. If you guys have any questions, comments, please comment below. If you like the video, please click the like button. And if you want to see more videos, subscribe. And I got some more great information too on 9 to 5 and what I think about the future of what 9 to 5 is going to look at like. And that's crazy. But I'm going to wait a few videos to bring that out because, yeah, it's going to be crazy. Thank you for watching, you guys. Remember, comment below. Please comment below. Thank you for watching.